All right, well, I'm sitting down with Gary Smith. Hello, Professor Smith. How are you?
I'm doing quite well, thank you.
And I've got a guest host today here, Mr. R. Scott Barnes, who is a band director at Washington Junior High out in Joliet. Hello, Scott.
How you doing, Dad? Thanks for having me here as well.
Thanks for being there, and thanks for setting us up with Professor Smith. And Professor Smith, we're here to talk a little bit about band. And normally I start these things off with where you came from, what your career went to, and everything. But sometimes I forget to get to some questions that I really want to know. And I kind of want to start with that first. And I read in an instrumentalist article, you said 10% of transcriptions actually do work for band. And I'm getting... So could we just dig right into that real quick? And are there any transcriptions that you might want to throw out there that in your career you can think of that worked very, very well?
Oh my God, there really are a lot, but a lot of transcriptions really don't work. The orchestral style is not captured in transcriptions. I know that very little Brahms works. A lot of Strauss things work. Ein Hildenleben, Hildenspiegel, things like that. And one of my favorite transcriptions is Mark Hinsley. He wrote several, but Pictures at an Exhibition is a really good one, and it works well. And you can play parts of it, or you can play all of it. And of course, you got your typical kinds of transcriptions. Malcolm Arnold, for example, all his things that John Painter transcribed, those are all good. The dances and so forth. And of course, like the old timers, Henry Fillmore and Paul Yoder and Alfred Reed, and all their transcriptions are good because they knew how to score. Frank Erickson, these were master orchestrators, and not only with original works, but when they transcribe things. Paul Lavender, he's probably one of the best transcribers I know, and he tends to do more advanced type literature that's much more challenging, but the military bands play a lot of his things, of course, and it's a pretty long list, and I think it's just a matter of selecting pieces that fit your band and trying to avoid transcriptions that really don't lend itself to the wind band medium, but and only sound good as an orchestral thing. Of course, that the whole suites, were originally written for band, been transcribed for orchestra, so that's in reverse, but it's interesting to see. Holst was one of the first people who really influenced a lot of his peers, a lot of his composers, to write original works for band, because, in the early 1900s, there was very little written original works for bands, and so all we had was transcriptions. And that's why we have so many of them, and a lot of the old ones from those days are still good. I know Mark Hinsley's son still sells transcriptions all over the world that his father did, and like I say, some of those things work and some of them don't. El Salon Mexico is another good one. It's interesting, though, there's a difference in philosophy of transcribers. One philosophy, like Mark Hinsley, tried to make the parts interesting, so he would change the original orchestrations and solos and so forth to give everybody more interesting parts, where someone like Guy Duker tried to keep as much of the original instrumentation as possible, and then only altered things when it was necessary. So you're talking about something we can go on for hours,
Sure. And I didn't mean to come out right out of the gate with some heavy hitter thing like that, but on the other hand, I look at that when I do these, and I'm hoping to help some other people. It's
interesting because my background when I went to college, it was considered that you play original band works, you don't play transcriptions, and so when I came to Illinois, the Illinois band with Harry Bejan played a lot of transcription, and I was just I couldn't believe how fantastic the timbres he got with the transcriptions, and I told Dr. Bejan, teach me how to do transcriptions. And he says, well, you don't have to. You play what you want with your band, and it's okay to play original band works. And I said, no, I want to learn this because I've missed out on a great medium, a wealth of literature. And so he said, all right, so we got a transcription, and he started showing me all the differences in interpreting transcriptions over, original band work. And so he was really a mentor for me in learning how to deal with transcriptions. And so I think almost every concert I did, I always would have at least one transcription.
What do you think the biggest takeaway that you got from Dr. Bejan as far as how to make those? I mean, obviously there's a plethora of things, but specifically you talked about how well he made those transcriptions work. So what did he do?
First of all, he was a maestro. Mm-hmm. I mean, you realize that he conducted the Detroit Symphony when they were on strike and got a standing ovation doing one of the Dvorak symphonies. And one time I brought Louis Sudler, who is the man who brought Schulte to Chicago, to one of Bejan's concerts. And we're sitting in the balcony, and about 10 minutes into the concert, he taps me on the shoulder. He says, "He's a maestro." I go, he was just blown away because he had such natural instincts, but he was a genius. I mean, this man knew more about music history than the musicologists. He knew more music theory than our theory and composition teachers. He knew all the literature, including the literature that he wouldn't play because he tended not to be impressed with too many things that are going on in the contemporary world. But he still was. But when he did a contemporary piece, he did it real well. And, this man could solfege at sight 12 tone rows, And I think I went my entire career with him, I went to almost every rehearsal he had because he had the instincts and the ear. And I remember one time reading an article about the role of the conductor, by all the maestros. And the one that stuck in my mind is that the role of the conductor is to try to get the ensemble to reproduce what's in your head. And if you don't have the music in your head, you do this either through gestures or talking, and that's what Bejan had the music in his head. And so he had a sound he wanted. It was Illinois band sound, his Illinois band sound. And so everything he did and said and everything he tried to accomplish was to get the ensemble to reproduce what was in his head. And that's what I learned from him. When I would ask him about things like tempos and all that, he says, you have instincts, use them when it feels right, when it sounds right. And so I think that's the most important thing I learned from him was that if you don't understand what it is you're trying to accomplish and you don't have the music in your head, then, you're never going to develop a style with your ensemble that is uniquely yours. And I remember one time hearing Bill Belichick, the coach of the Patriots, who's one of the greatest coaches of all times. One of the quotes he made one time was, a goal without a plan is a wish. And that stuck in my mind because that sort of, applies to us. And the mere fact that he had a plan and he had a goal. And I don't think even a lot of the students realize just how brilliant he was, because he was very demanding. Sometimes he scared people, but and so there was a difference between tension, intensity. There's a big difference, and he was an intense man, and some people interpret that as tension at times, but nonetheless, when he was on, his ensembles were so musical that, words can't describe it because you had to experience it. And I learned a lot. I learned from him to use my ears instead of the machines and so forth. And, I learned about interpretation of marches. Mm-hmm. And the man, his recordings he did of marches, American and Continental marches is the best. And so it's funny because he was the kind of man that never tried to tell you what to do. You had to ask. And then he'd say, "Well, since you asked," and then he'd lay into you, see? And so I would just come in and sometimes I'd be embarrassed. This is a stupid question. He was one of these that there's no such thing as a stupid question. And so he was a phenomenal mentor, and he would sit with me for hours if I wanted to and discuss things about, like interpretation of articulations, which changes with the various eras of music. You know, an accent in classical music is different than an accent in jazz and rock or contemporary music, you know. And so now, you know, one of my missions in life is to try to get people to understand the proper way to play accents, which in most cases is full value note. It's not spaced. But then in earlier transcriptions that it might mean to be spaced. And so it depends on the style in the era of the music. And those are the things I learned from him, you know. Of course, playing articulations uniformly in an ensemble is a lost art now, in my opinion. And balance is a lost art. You know, basically most everything I hear now is notes and rhythms and nothing beyond that.
Well, let's do this then, because I have some more things I'd like to ask about your philosophies and Dr. Bijan, but also just in terms of your story, I think you have one of the most fascinating stories about your upbringing and what you've done and where you're at now. And would you mind, just for our listeners, just kind of...
Well, I'll just kind of do the Reader's Digest version. Go ahead. It could be kind of boring. I was fortunate. My father had a band camp he founded in 1949. And it was primarily more for marching bands, and we were probably in drum majors and so forth. But we also had a real live band camp that went for 2 weeks. So as a kid growing up, I was, you know, surrounded in an environment of people like, you know, Bill Ravelli and John Painter and Frank Bencasciuto, you know, and people like that who actually taught at our camp, and they were an inspiration to me. And so, you know, I would listen to the recordings and so forth. And when I was, I think a freshman in high school, I grew up in Orlando. I listened to a recording, Fennell's first recording, and it was all monaural on Mercury Records. He released a British Band Classics, which had, you know, the whole suites and so forth, original suite and all that. And I heard that, and it's like, I want to be a band director. That's what did it. And so, the combination of growing up in the summers, my father ran the camps in the summer in Indiana, and then in the winters, he was a marching guy, and he taught drill, and my mother taught majorette corps, and we lived in Orlando in the winters. And so I was fortunate to be, influenced in the marching world by Ohio State and Michigan, and Illinois, which were, you know, the Big Ten bands when I was a kid, were eons beyond anything else. And Illinois was the band mecca of the world, you know, with A.A. Harding. And so I think all of us are products of our environment. And so you don't even realize the things that influence you till you get older and look back and realize, oh my God, I'm doing this because of that and so forth. And so I went to Butler. And the reason I went to Butler is because I wanted to study with Niall Hovey, who was an amazing music educator, and conductor and musician. Well, then the year I got there, he retired. And so we had John Colbert, but turned out he's the one that, you know, influenced me to play original works for band, mostly. And so, at Butler, I got a very good education. And in the summers, I would go help work with high school bands. I used to write a lot of arrangements for marching bands and so forth. And so as a college student, I did a lot of, working with other bands, helping other bands in their camps and so forth. So as a result, I got, the top job in Indiana at that time, which was Northside High School in Fort Wayne. It was the largest band program in the state. And they were already, I mean, they were state marching champions. They had an orchestra, 2 symphonic bands, and a humongous music program. They wanted somebody with a master's degree and 5 years teaching experience. But because I had done all these other things, you know, while I was in school, somehow I got the job, you know, and I was surprised they even got an interview, and I got the job. So I was handed, a great program. I mean, I didn't have to build anything, where my friends I went to school with, they had to build programs, you know, and I was kind of envious of them, you know, because they developed You know, it's like building your own house as opposed to buying one someone else built, you know. And it was a wonderful experience. And my sort of my supervisor at Butler, you know, that sort of guided me, who was the marching band director then, said, I'd like you to go into college, so I will get you some interviews. And, you know, so he got me an interview at St. Joseph College in Rensselaer, Indiana, which was a very small Catholic school. It's only 1,000 students. And so there was only like 18 people in the band. And I went and interviewed it, and I just thought, I was so enthralled because it's a college. It's college. I'd take the job. And my supervisor called me and said, I didn't want you to take the job. I just wanted you to have an interview in a college level that says, we can get you a better job. I said, yeah, but it's my friends who built programs. I want to see if I can do that, you know. And so I was there 4 years, and all the priests, I was the only, you know, non-Catholic there, only Protestant. And the priests, you know, they're like, we want a band that's better than Notre Dame, you know. And so we built a program with we had 90 kids in it, and all new instruments and all new uniforms and scholarships and things. And we were on national TV. Back then they used to show the halftimes at the pro games. The Bears used to train at St. Joe College, so we had ins to perform each year at the Chicago Bears at halftime. And the middle school band director there was the son of the director of bands at Indiana State, and the job opened up at Indiana State, and he called his father and told him he should, you know, look at me. And so I got that job, Indiana State, which was a terrific job. A man by the name of Jim Church had an incredible marching band there. And so that was my main job, was to take over the marching band, be assistant director of bands, and then do the second symphonic band. So I was there 4 years, and I loved it so much that I had never intended on leaving, because I had support from athletics and the president of the school, and we had 280 in the marching band, and I had the second band. I started a third band too, so that the second band would get better. That's because my concert work was equally important to me as the marching band. And so I never intended on leaving. And then one day I get a call from Guy Duker at University of Illinois. He said, why didn't you apply for the job here? I said, well, I don't know anyone there. I don't have a doctorate, nor do I intend on getting one. And they had done a search and didn't want anybody. They didn't want to hire any of them. So he said, can you be here tomorrow? He said, grab some films and come here tomorrow. I go, well, okay. It's like, you know, that's how quick it happened, you know. And I spent the day there in athletics and at the dean's office and the School of Music and with students, and I showed films and all that. And they offered me a job right there that day, you know. I was like, whoa. And they said, we want you to bring the Indiana State style here. We want just to duplicate what you did at Indiana State with the arrangements that you do and the dancers and the more show type band and so forth. And drastically change. We don't want you to maintain anything that's been done before, because they were unhappy with the marching band. And my dad was so excited because my dad's dream was always that you'd be a Big Ten band director someday, because the Big Ten bands then were amazing. So I took the job, you know, and without even asking questions about salary or anything, that was a mistake. And it's like, I was just so excited. And so the first thing I did, I got a meeting with about 60 kids in the band, and I brought a bunch of arrangements with me that I had done at Indiana State with Alan Harney, who was my arranger at Indiana State. And I said, okay, we have to pick music for the season, and we're going to play these tunes, and you hold up one finger if you really like it and you want to do it. Hold up 2 fingers if you say it's okay and you wouldn't mind doing it, but it doesn't blow you away. 3 fingers if it's average. 4 fingers if you hate it and you don't want to do it. So we'd play through a tune. I said, okay. And they go, 1. Everyone play another tune. 1. I said, wait a minute. We're trying to get rid of something. You don't have to, you know. They said, no, you don't understand. We've never played anything like this. And we like it. They liked everything, you know, we played, every tune, you know. And so I had to change basically everything the band did. And a lot of the traditions they had I didn't like. And the only tradition they had that was good was the Chief Illiniwek tradition, the Native American thing, you know. So I was told not to mess with that. Okay. You know, because people basically went out in the concession stands, halftime, came back for the 3-1, didn't pay attention to the band. And so that was a real challenge to begin to develop identity as that we are not just there as a backdrop for the chief. We are a marching band, and the chief is just part of our presentation. And so the audience was, I had a lot of interviews with the media, and they knew I did a quick step thing at Indiana State, which I didn't like because I could never get uniform foot action. So I was hoping I didn't have to do that. Well, they're like, you're going to do the quick step, right? You're going to do the quick step. Oh, yeah, I guess so. So I wrote it so that we'd feet in from behind and kind of hide the feet so that just a lot of motion, you know, and I didn't have to worry about the uniformity. And so the band was in such bad shape, they couldn't make it from the tunnel out into the run-on, and then they would just be out of air and they couldn't play the first note. And so I'm trying to get them in shape because they just never had done anything like this. And so the first game, we came out through the tunnel, and I couldn't do the quick step, so I had to march them all the way out till they got to yard lines. Then we broke in the quick step, so they didn't have to do it very long. And so as we're coming out, just to a regular cadence, the crowd started moaning because they wanted to see the quick step. And it's like, they're not going to do it. And then when we busted into the quick step, place erupted, of course. You know, it's like, oh my God, they are doing it. And the concession people said, this is the first time ever we didn't have any business at halftime because no one went out, you know. And so the dean told me, I don't care if half the band quits, you got to change everything, you know. And so no one quit. The word was out that, well, band's no fun anymore, but this had to be done. You know, we had to clamp down on discipline and all that. So the first year I had to kind of be a tyrant. They got they used to drink at the games. They would skip rehearsals. And I mean, it was a terrible situation in my estimation, the way they did things, and I had to change everything. And so, meanwhile, I've continued to run my summer camps for drum majors and all that. And
that's the Smith-Walber's clinic for listeners.
Right. You know, and we sold the campgrounds in Indiana in 1990, and I moved the camps to U of I and eventually to Eastern Illinois. And then Barry Hauser took over a year ago, and I'd simply assist him. But we still run the camps at Eastern, and then I help him out. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell, because, you know, I think when you're in an environment where you're around the greats, it kind of, a lot of stuff rubs off on you. I was always fascinated by the Ohio State marching band because they had matched timbres, and that not only had matched instruments, but they had one trombone sound, one trumpet sound, and the arrangements, they had a stylistic thing where I had a style, my concept of style, I wanted to have my own. I didn't want to sound like Ohio State or Michigan, but I wanted my own sound. And so I kind of developed a way of scoring things, you know, with an emphasis more in the middle. Mellophones were a new thing, and I got them right away, and eventually flugelhorns too. And so the band has tended to have a bigger sound in the middle. And so I would write all piccolos instead of flutes, and they essentially carried the melody, you know, in 2 octaves above trumpets, or when there were trills and woodwind idioms, and then one clarinet part. So even with a smaller number of woodwinds, you still heard a woodwind timbre. And it wouldn't be like the clarinets are overbalancing the band. I mean, that wouldn't be possible. But if the clarinets and the piccolos stopped playing, you would hear a difference in the sound. And so Alan Horney, I brought him with me as my arranger, you know, and changed the style of the band right away to develop our own concept of sound. And same thing had to happen in percussion, because all this stuff was new. You know, pitch bass drums were new, tenor drums were a new thing, and I had to find ways to get money to get those instruments bought so that I could get the same sound I had in Indiana State, you know. And so eventually, by the second year, we had pretty much established the style of sound that I was after. And I think was uniquely ours. you know, so we didn't sound like any of the other Big Ten bands, with a great deal of emphasis on stylistic articulation, so that we could make a real rock sound, we could make a real jazz sound, you know, style wise. And that's why Alan Horney liked writing for us, he said, because the band plays proper style and does justice to my arrangements.
So you talked about your arranger, Alan Horney, and I believe you'd mentioned Glenn Daum.
Yeah, actually Glenn Daum was the arranger at Indiana State when I came.
Okay.
And I had him, and he was amazing. And then he moved to University of Texas and became the jazz band director. Said, I don't want to write for marching band anymore. I almost had a heart attack because he's what I wanted. He had the sound I wanted. He says, but I have a student who writes just like me. You won't be able to tell the difference. And that was Alan Horney. And so he started writing for me while I was at Indiana State. So when I came to Illinois, I had both Glenn Daum and Alan Horney arrangements with me, you know. I used to arrange my own music before, up to that point. But when I came to Illinois and I heard those guys, I said, I want the best. And it's not me, you know. It's those guys. I can't arrange like that. And so I quit arranging and had them do all of it. And of course, the Illinois band loved it. You know, the music and the arrangements these guys wrote.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the days that you, as I'm an alumnus of your band, and the days that you brought in Mr. Horney to work his arrangements for some of our absolute favorite music rehearsals, because he would
when he walked in, everybody cheered because he was
for
really,
about 5 minutes. I mean,
but
he got such great things out of us.
Yeah, he did, and he was not a fan of marching bands, but he liked ours. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I retired, he stopped arranging then.
So you talked about the sound you wanted. And people like Glenn Daum and Mr. Horney being able to do it for it. Was it you being influenced by what you heard them do, or was it something where you're kind of instructing them, this is what I'm looking for, and they were able to provide that?
It's a sound I couldn't get with my band at St. Joe because it was too small. Mm-hmm. And so when I came to Indiana State, when I had all of a sudden I had a big band, and I liked the way they scored, but it's not just having it score. They were scoring the way I wanted the sound, but it was getting the band, the instrumentation to match up and the timbres and the style and so forth. So I changed the way the band played and everything. But their arrangements fit. They wrote, you know, with a big middle and so forth, you know, and of course then I got the drum corps kids involved to help me build a drum line, and so it was a combination of them scoring the way I wanted, and me being able to get the instrumentation to fit that. And then, of course, when I came to Illinois, I couldn't get it right away because the band was half woodwinds. You know, there was hardly any brass in the band. And so I had to change completely the instrumentation. And so what did it is we did an exhibition for the marching festival, which the marching line had never done.
Really?
Yeah, and the kids were scared to death because they said, you know, well, these bands, they work on one show a year, and here we do a different show every weekend, and we're going to get in front of those kids of the great bands from Illinois. I said, yeah, we're going to do it. And so we did a Gershwin show. And I staged it with a pretty simple drill, and Horney wrote all the music, beautiful stuff on Horney. And the band brought the house down. Well, then kids lined up. I mean, the high school kids just started pouring in to audition. And by the second year, you know, there was only 5 music majors in the whole band. In the second year, we had 90. Mm-hmm. And so that helped. We got a bunch of them. And the school music asked me, do you want to make it a requirement? Music ed. I said, no, I don't want anybody in there and doesn't want to be in it. And I want to make it so it's something that people want to do. And so by the third year, that's when we really had the instrumentation the way I wanted it.
How did you come to the use of the flugelhorns?
Well, see, because I wanted them because, number one, it's a bigger bore instrument. So when you're down in low range, if you play loud, you get an edgy sound. When you get down low below G on the staff, and it starts getting blatty if you play loud, where the flugelhorn can play in a lower tessitura, play louder and get a more metal sound. Mm-hmm. And then also with the way Horney was writing for us, I could use it as a swing instrument there were times when I just had them play by themselves. Other times they would double and enforce the mellophones. And then the other time was when I wanted to do jazz and get 4 trombone parts, I could make them one of the 4 trombone parts, see? And so we were able to get a lot of variations of balances with them. And then a lot of the music majors liked that because they wanted to go easier on the chops. And we like really great players that wanted to play flugelhorn instead of first or second trumpet. And of course, I was always a proponent of that. The best players are not necessarily the ones that ought to play first parts. It's people who have the highest range. And because the first trumpet part's easier than the second and third part. You ever try to memorize a third trumpet part? You know? And so that was another thing where I was real careful about not putting people on first parts just because they were a better player, but because of range.
Well, that mentality by the time I got there in the early 90s was definitely very firmly entrenched. I mean, I obviously was a music major. I worked my way up to Mr. Keene's band and all that, but I was second trumpet player all the way through. I was never a range guy, and I didn't want to. Our philosophy, I know, within the section leaders was just that, okay, the people who can do that, who have that gift, you know, great, knock yourself out. Let the engineering majors do that if they can,
exactly.
You know. But it was never about the normal trumpet player ego of I have to be on first. Way, you know.
So, was this a pretty smooth transition then, or did you get any alumni pushback?
Well, the only pushback I got was the former director.
Okay.
He was very opposed to me, and he said a lot of things about me that weren't true before I even got there. He said I was going to change the band to become a drum corps, and so at first there were his supporters who were ready to trounce on me before I even got there. But when they saw how successful we were, they changed real quick. And I won the alumni over right away the first year. Because how do you dispute standing ovations from the audience, which they never had? You know, we're not just there to play music for the chief. And the first time when the band realized that we, as a separate entity within ourselves, other than the chief is just one of our things. So we were invited to perform at the Detroit Lions game, and the entertainment director was an Illinois grad, and he says, "You're going to bring the chief, aren't you?" I go, "Well, this isn't, you know, people in Detroit don't know this thing. I don't think we need the chief. We'll just do a halftime show." No, the chief, you know, he was from the old school.
Right.
That's the main thing. He said, people like it no matter where you go. I said, I don't think so. And he says, okay, all right, we'll do it. We'll do 3-1. Well, we did a Star Wars show. Star Wars was brand new. We did a robot routine and all this stuff, and with some electronic sounds, and we get this huge standing ovation from the Detroit Lions. And then we started up to 3-1, and people just started walking out. And at first the band was like, "Oh my God, don't they know it's the chief? You know, you got to love the chief and all." And then they began to realize, hey, wait a minute, that standing ovation was for us. You know, and the reason people react in Illinois is because that's the way you do it. You know, that's the way you react to it. It's a tradition that only means something to people who are at Illinois. And you got to see some outsider go, "Oh my God, you got to see this thing." I mean, it doesn't have the same impact as somebody who's, you know, comes from within. Yeah. And so that was the first time, and this was my second year, that the band goes, "Hey, wait a minute, we got a great band here," you know, and the whole thing changed where the pride the band began to develop, and the fact that we were now getting ovations for our halftime, and then the 3-1 was just one of our great traditions that we maintain for the Illinois fans. But it's just like the script Ohio. Look at people there go crazy, but, you know, some people that are not Ohio State fans, they want to sit there and watch for 4 minutes. Them write out a script is like, you know, could be the most boring thing in the world to somebody, you know. And so in the block ambulance, well, it's just an M moving up down the field where in Michigan, they scream and yell and all that. Well, it just look like it's just an M going up down the field to
You have to march it, though, I have to say.
Yeah.
If you have to, you appreciate that. Because, I mean, if you've never marched that drill before, and everyone at a certain point has individual instructions, and you have to turn at spots that don't make any sense with the music. Right. So, as a director, I can definitely appreciate that on a whole other level. But yeah, if you're not aware of that.
But and so then finally, after by the second year, the band realized our definition of fun now is to have a great band, not to get drunk and party.
Yeah.
That's the fun part now, is to have a great band.
So you start at U of I in 76, and then I'm seeing that the system comes out in 1984.
The book, you mean?
Yeah. So could you explain a little bit of the process and the inception of that?
Well, I wanted to develop a book that could be used as a kind of a first aid kit for a first year teacher who doesn't have any knowledge about marching band. In fact, the band director at Wyatt Roberts at Granite City he had to take that band over as a choir guy. Never once knew anything or been in a marching band. And he came to our director's workshop, Smith Warbridge, and he got my book, and that's what he used, about a week before band camp. That was his training.
Wow.
Now he's got one of the best bands in the Midwest. And so that's why I call it the system, because if you don't really know how to teach marching steps, or you don't have a command system, you can use all this. But if you do, then you can look at some of these things in the book that make it better. But if you don't have anything, you got it, a command system, so it started out basically as a kind of a catch-all textbook for band directors and drum majors and people in leadership. And now it's a couple hundred more pages than it was then. So it has expanded considerably when I bring in some other outside experts for percussion and all that to make it more thorough. So now it can be it's more used as a textbook in colleges and even some advanced directors buy it because of some of the stuff in it. And so every 2 or 3 years I update it and make a new run. And so the book has become a little more diversified. So, and there's a lot of stuff about leadership in there now. And there are some directors that just use the leadership thing. So we have, auditions for drum majors and all that, and we have audition sheets and all that. And so now we have a website, so when you buy the book, you can go to the website and register and get free PDF files if you want to print something out for like audition sheets, things like that. Or if I update the book, then get the updates, which we're getting ready to do now. And so it's just sort of went through a metamorphosis of just a basic survival kit to something that's more thorough now for marching band. And by the way, we seem to be talking primarily about the marching band. My first love was always the symphonic band.
Sure, and that's why I kind of wanted to lead it with that original question. And that's why I went to
Illinois, because the second band in Illinois was an amazing group.
Yeah,
and that's the reason I never left Illinois for anything else. To become a director of band somewhere else. Why? How can I get anything better than I got right here? I don't care about my title.
Yeah, yeah. What were some of the highlights with your symphonic band at Illinois?
Oh, there's so many, because they would bring in guest conductors and stuff, and they would guest with both bands.
Yeah,
I think some of it was when we premiere some things.
Yeah.
And we played some stuff that was really off the wall. We did a thing called It Takes a Village that we featured a percussion doing all kinds of different stuff. And it was just totally way different than anything anybody had ever done. And we did another thing where we started out scattered all in the hall playing this aleatory thing, and little by little gradually coming on the stage and then busting into this big fanfare. It was just some things like that we did. That I think we were the first one to do that ghost train thing other than the premiere of it.
Okay.
And nothing like that had been done, and I got a copy of it, and we played it like a week after Tom Leslie did it at UNLV. And so it's a combination of a lot of things, and I started out, I came and had the third band when I came, which is also a great band. Guy Duker had the second band, and he says, well, I want you to have a second band. I said, I'm happy with the third band. Mm-hmm. He says, no, I want you to have the second band. So that took over the second band. And then when Jim Colonel came, he had the second band. I had back to third band. So I kind of went back and forth.
Sure. Got a party crasher.
Come on in, bud. Hey. How's it going?
Hello, how are you?
Good. How's it going? Good.
How you doing?
That's a blast from the past.
Yeah, no kidding.
What is going on here?
Oh, we're doing a podcast. He has a radio station that does brought podcasts of band records.
We're interviewing him for a job.
From the Midwest. So he said when he found out you were coming, he go, well, let's get you while you're here.
Yeah, I am Don Stinson.
Cody.Birdwell. Good to meet you.
Yeah.
So Cody was assistant director of bands during my time.
Okay.
All
right.
I got pictures of you in your March Carolina outfit in Ireland.
Yeah, that one in
I got it.
Oh, that's another thing we need to mention. We were the first American college band to march St. Pat's Parade.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Yeah,
I was there.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, we were the first. Yeah. So we were invited to be featured as the lead band, or the last band in the parade for the St. Patrick's Parade in Ireland, and the Irish Tourist Board subsidized our trip to get us. And we took 300, the first year, and so we got like the best hotels and everything. For a lot less money. And so the band's been there several times since. But the Irish Tourist Board said that we see that as a new marketing, the college bands to America. And, I think the next year there's like 9 college bands that end up going, cause they're all calling me, what's it like? It was a perfect place to take college kids. It was a great combination of fun and performing. And we brought up we were the last band in the parade, and everybody followed us, and so when we got to the end of the parade, we had a huge crowd, and we did all of our typical crazy stuff, and I think that was a high point because it was another first.
Yeah.
We were the first band to use electronic music, first band to make a CD, of any band, of any college band, period. We had our CD go up into space with Apollo 13 or whatever it was, they were playing our music in space.
Wasn't it one of the commanders of because I was in the band at the time, and we recorded it. We recorded like Oski and said hello to him or something.
Yeah, they said that was John Tanner from Danville. He was an astronaut. And the other engineers in there were from Purdue, so they weren't digging it too much, to hear all the Illinois music. So that Irish, the trip to Ireland was a big deal. The biggest bands over there in the parade were like 48, and here we come like 300. Of course, I made them 6 wide and stretched it out like 3 blocks, and people were like freaking out. It's like they couldn't believe it.
So there's a lot of firsts with your career, and did you seek to be innovative, or is this just kind of?
No, I didn't say, I need to do this because nobody else has done it. I tended to do a lot of gimmicks with a marching band and end up finding out no one had done it. And I did that even at St. Joe College. I had a skydiver come in with a game ball, and he landed, and it was in the national news, hit it. And then that next year, the Rice Bowl in Chicago thought they would try it. And they did. It was a night show, and they landed in the wrong game. Oh. These people were out there being invaded by Russians,
Wow.
And so we did a lot of stuff.
So we were talking a little bit before Professor Birdwell got here about your band at U of I. Could you tell us what your preparation was for each rehearsal?
Well, but with my concert band and my marching band, I always treat every rehearsal like, if I had to do the show tonight, what would I do now?
Okay.
And it's like, when I did my symphonic band the same way. We got to do the concert tonight, and I got an hour and a half to get ready for it. And then you start with the big things, you narrow down a little. So I tried to get stuff taught as fast as possible, even if it was not very good. So, and then from that point, whatever time you had remaining, you would gradually get more and more refined. And as opposed to the theory of perfecting things as you go. Well, that works for, Navy bands that do one show all year long. But when sometimes you got 1 week to learn a whole new show. The band used to call it 1 week shows, and they spelled it WEAK. It's like, we have a 1 week show coming up.
Well, there were definitely levels of difficulty.
Yeah, that's right.
Control if it was a 1 week.
And you know, with some of the most simple ones got the biggest response, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's things like that I think are very important for directors to realize.
Yeah. Well, you know, we didn't have YouTube in those days, and we did a lot of stuff that now is getting a lot of attention, you know, on YouTube, you know, animated stuff. I mean, we had 2 cannons, played 1812 with smoke coming out and exploding, you know, and we had a spaceship going down the field with its smoke coming out. And, you know, that stuff now, that's hot stuff now.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say it, because, I hear those things coming through, and I'm like, I remember doing this. I remember seeing footage of the Marching Illini from the 30s and 40s, even, some of those animated things.
Yeah, right.
I was told by one of your other alums to ask you about some of your famous Marching Illini stories.
Yes.
He said you have some that'll be okay for
not too many.
Yes, some. This is a
God, there's so many. Well, there's so many. One of the clean ones I tell is the thing is was interesting about the marching band. Even though you had 360 people, they almost became like an individual, and they could actually communicate through osmosis. It's amazing because, and they would be like, all their minds would be thinking they're doing the same thing. We're playing Purdue on national TV, ABC Wide World Sports. Ned Steckel was a producer of ABC Wide Sports, and his dad had been a high school band director. And so he loved our band, you know, but this was when they stopped showing bands, you know, and he didn't get on TV. And so he was coming to our rehearsals, and we got to be friends. And I said, why don't they show the bands anymore? He goes, well, it's money. You know, I said, was it because the bands are bad? He said, no, it's because, you know, we get $1 million a minute now. The only way you can get on is someone pay for that time. And he says, but I'll tell you what, at pregame, after the Purdue band gets done with their shows, they had all time, you hold 2 minutes and I'll get you guys on, okay? Like, okay, cool. And so we get to the game, and Purdue band gets done, and I'm waiting 2 minutes, and this gal who's got, you know, work with ABC starts screaming at me, go, 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 go. And I say things like, Ned Steckel told me to hold 2 minutes. You can't hold 2 minutes. It's going to put the national anthem in the wrong place. We managed to argue for 2 minutes, see? So she says, you must cut 2 minutes out of the pregame show. And I said, no problem. So I got up in the ladder, and I held up 2 fingers, the band, and then, like, cut. Of course, they didn't know what the hell that was all about. So we went ahead and did our show. And when it was over, she came over and says, well, I don't know how you did it, but thank you. My brother was drum major. He said, what was that 2 thing you're holding up? I go, don't ask you. She thought I actually cut 2 minutes.
Lovely. So you talked about how the band would be just of this one mindset.
Yeah.
And I mean, as you experience it, and it's hard to even describe how that happens, but it just does.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
But I mean, to me, during my time, and I say this a lot, the Marching Illini, to me, was still the greatest overall organization I've ever been a part of.
Well, think about it. You got, first of all, the diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Politics doesn't matter. Religion doesn't matter. How much money your parents have. Everybody's equal. And you got every major represented, every age represented, all working to share a common goal. And it goes to show you there is such thing as peace and tranquility in large groups of people when you have a common goal. Yep. And you focus on achieving that common goal. And we never talked about politics. We never talked, even the controversy with Chief, it was a subject I wouldn't allow because that's when you start taking sides.
Right.
And you start having differences of opinion. And so the whole idea then was because you are all equal. It doesn't matter if you're playing first, second, or third trumpet. Every part's important. And the mere fact you're on the field and you're in that band, each individual contributes to the total success of the group. The better the individual performs, the better the ensemble. And so I think that's where the exhilaration comes from, because I am important. I'm part of this. And you experience success. And when you have the feeling of success, it causes you to motivate yourself. And so rather than try to motivate you, we try to create an environment where you motivate yourself as a result of the experience you're having in the group. And I think that's the biggest mistake teachers make. They're too focused on trying to motivate people, and you can't. And people have to motivate themselves and focus on what causes somebody to be motivated rather than motivating someone. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And that's not, that's by design. That's not an accident.
Well, that leads me to the next thing that I want to talk to you about. You'd mentioned your book, The System. Mm-hmm. And if you've spent any time in the Smith-Walbridge camps or in your bands and all that, that's a part of the philosophy that you would always talk about: system plus spirit equals success. Yeah. And I was wondering if you could talk to a little bit to our listeners.
Well, it's, I'm not into axioms and quotes and all that, but for me, it's always been my guiding light because it overly simplifies the whole process. System being as a way of doing things, and spirit is the way that the people that you're demonstrating the system to react to it. And so if you have a good system, which is what the director provides, the teacher, and that's a way of doing things, and it's effective, then the students react to it in a positive way, and the result is success. And the success has the byproducts we all want, like good attitude, showing up, working hard, enjoying it. And so, whereas I think so many teachers are more interested in trying to work to achieve success instead of what causes success, which is the process. So the process is what causes the result, and that's why it's the combination of the system and how the students react to it. And if both of those attributes are effective, then you're going to be successful. And the success builds momentum, and that's why we started with something as simple as all of you clap your hands together one time to get the concept in the simplest form of how it works. That clapping your hand is not a hard thing to do, but to get 200, 350 people clap your hand at the same time is. And so everything we do is to try to get as close to perfection as possible. And it's by the intensity of the individual contribution or the spirit part of it. When I say spirit, I don't mean like cheerleading and stuff type thing. I'm talking about what comes from inside of you when you react to this, what I call the system. So that's why, that's why you have coaches who, all different styles that are successful, because the misconception is that a leader is somebody who tells other people what to do. And that's far as saying from the truth. A leader is someone who has the ability to change the way people think and or act. And if you don't have expertise, skills, and knowledge in your medium, then you're not going to be successful. But the other component that all leaders have in common is the ability to transfer that to other people. And so that's what we don't teach in the colleges. So that's why you have great musicians with crappy bands, because they've got all this knowledge and skill, but they know how to transfer it. They can pick up a trumpet and play high trumpet concerto, but they can't teach the band how to phrase or articulate because you're dealing with the transferring process. That's why you have great coaches. Yeah, that some are mean and nasty, and others are easygoing and calm, but they're both successful because those two components are in common with each other.
What are some other things that you can think of today as you watch and listen to bands that maybe band directors need to work on or focus on more?
Well, I think it goes back to what I told you before. If you don't have the music in your head, how are you going to teach it? I can sing Mary Had a Lamb for you. If I sing a wrong note, you'll know it because you know the tune. Yeah. But if you didn't know the tune, you may not know that I sang a wrong note. And so if you're working with an ensemble and you don't know the music and you don't have it in your head, how are you going to get them to reproduce the right thing based on? And so I think most band directors are not prepared. They're simply, beating time. And when it says this is the tempo and this is the rhythm and all that, and that without no idea at all about the total concept of that music. And so every director has a different way of getting it. Like I said, that either through gestures or talking or both. Mm-hmm. And so, but when you don't even know what it is you're trying to achieve, where you're just, following like a machine, the score, then those are the ensembles that never achieve a high level of performance.
And this is with all due respect to every other band director, but my band director would talk about first time, it was 1969 or 1970 when U of I got a new band director. He drove out 3 hours and watched Dr. Harry Beejan's rehearsal, or I'm sorry, concert, and said he just leaned forward and just had not heard a band sound like that before. And I know we kind of started off talking a little bit about...
Well, you're talking about the hunger and knowledge, which is, I think, lacking nowadays. Every person wants to improve themselves. Maturation is a lifetime process. Yeah. And how else are you going to learn unless you have models and you get yourself in situations where you have an opportunity to grow and learn and hear examples. That's why there's so many people come to the Midwest Band Clinic, you know. But the question is, once you hear a great band, what did you learn from it? Are you going to be able to institute some of the things you learned, what you heard? How did that band get that sound?
Yeah.
You know, I was fascinated, like I told you, with the marching band, I was fascinated with Ohio State. How did they get that? Not that I want to sound like them, but how did they get there where they are? And so the hunger of knowledge is something that instills all of us to get better at what we do, you know, over a lifetime. Yeah. And the more knowledge and experience you gain, the harder it is to find things that are, you know, inspirational to you and you learn from. And so that's one of the reasons why people who don't continue to grow get mired in mediocrity their whole life. And the people who excel is a very small percentage of our society.
Well, I don't want to ignore Dr. Birdwell here. How did Dr. Birdwell and you?
Well, he came to Illinois, you know, as an assistant director, and the reason I liked him is because he played golf and he played racquetball.
That's all that mattered to you,
I found out later he was also a good musician, a good conductor too. So, but I don't know, we just hit it off. We're almost like brothers, you know. We're just very good friends. And when you teach with colleagues you like and you want to be around, have fun. I mean, we hung together. Yeah. You know, we did stuff together, and it makes the teaching process so much more enjoyable.
Is that all true?
Yeah, I mean, we were pretty tight. I mean, there were so many. I was still pretty green, and when I landed at the U of I had been teaching 2 previous years at a real small college up in Michigan. And so I went from small and isolated to really big and one of the leading programs in the country. And so I was pretty green when I got there. But one thing that I think we did immediately was just what Gary said. It was Jim Keene, Gary, and myself. And the 3 of us kind of connected, you know, in a lot of ways that were really cool. And we all had sort of the fundamental passion for band, you know, just for being great, having pride in being part of a great program and the excitement that was there in the Illinois band program at the time. And so, I mean, I work with Gary every day and I work with Jim I was the one in the middle office. And so, you know, I felt like the tennis net in a tennis match, you know. I had to sit there and Keene would walk right by and go into Gary's office, then Gary would walk by and go to Keene's office. And every once in a while they'd stop and yell at me, you know. But it was, you know, the 3 of us kind of connected, you know, like Gary and I would go play racquetball every day for lunch. You know, that was our lunch break. We'd go play racquetball, come back and teach in the morning or afternoon, but play racquetball just to get out of the office and then come back for marching rehearsals. And then, and Jim and I Gary would, you know, play golf or do whatever. We had our outlets. And so I think the outlets that the time that we could spend outside of the office helped make us stronger in the office, ultimately. Right. And so, there were a lot of challenges in a lot of different ways, but we worked together to overcome those challenges. But as I look back, I think just the pure joy in being at Illinois, working with the great students, and working with great colleagues and the tradition and legacy of the Illinois band program, the 5 years I was there, every year for me became more and more meaningful. And when I left, I took that with me and always have. So it was tremendous. My career, where I am today, I would not be without the 5 years I spent working at Illinois and learning from the one and only Gary Smith. So,
but the other thing is the whole idea of sharing and working together, and it's not all about you. It's all about the total process, everybody involved. And if you're into it just for personal recognition and gain and fame and all that, the students pick up on that real quick.
Sure.
And Cody was not, he didn't have this big ego. He wouldn't fit in, with our scheme of things. That's why it was comfortable for him, because, it was not a big ego thing.
So, Scott, what was the student perspective?
Well, I mean, you could definitely tell on the spot here. But, no, I mean, the one thing that I think that was very clear watching the three of you is that you were definitely philosophically on the same page. I mean, there was definitely never conflicting messages in terms of just whether it was musical or whether just how to run a band program, and that is in leadership and everything else. And that came through, I think, that you were all friends that way as well, too. So, I mean, the one thing I think just in terms of the Illinois bands in general that was just mind-blowing to me from that first Marching Illini rehearsal, and if you come in, I mean, essentially that marching band rehearsal, the first taste of the Illinois bands was just everything was on a whole different level, and everyone was, both the students and the directors and everyone else was dedicated to doing the best job humanly possible, and there were never any egos. There was never any, weird hazing or anything else. And all that you automatic from the day that you walked in the room, what the goal was and what it was all about. And you didn't even have to be told. You just knew by sitting down. And that was I think that was an environment that the three of you created.
And the environment was a combination of things. It was the directors, and we worked really hard. And I was there to help Gary in every way I could. And same thing with me and Jim Keene. I was just there to help. But the environment of the directors and the people, I mean, it went beyond just three directors. I mean, there was Harvey Herman.
Yeah.
Now that's an interesting story, right? Yeah. And then Eldon Oyen and Ruth, the secretary. I mean, it was an interesting dynamic, and it was amazing at times in terms of hilarious, being fun and being, but it was just this, centricity that just kind of kept it going. And then, of course, Bev. So, which she kind of kept everything in line, because, Gary's wife is a remarkable person. And
well, we just celebrated our 53rd anniversary, and I said, and people ask me, how did that last that long? I says, I just do what I'm told.
That's right.
I said, when I come home, I don't want to be in charge of anything.
But the dynamic of all the people and the students were the work ethic of, and Jim Keene would say this, the students who come to U of I just have that good Midwestern work ethic, that was really powerful, and they wanted to work hard.
Well, you hit on something that when I first came to Illinois, the Illinois kids are just homespun Midwestern kids, yet they're academically very sophisticated, just as much as the Eastern schools, the Harvards and Yales. I mean, intellectually, they're on that level, but when you're around them, they're just homespun kids. They're not this, sophisticated kind of a aristocratic kind of a culture. And so I never realized that until we got into complex things and how they would perceive things. And, that was only, and I told the band, I said, you know what? I wouldn't even been able to get into this school. And so it's ironic that I'm teaching at a place where everybody's smarter than me, but I've got experience and you don't. So,
but I think then there's also all that combined with the tradition, the history of A.A. Harding, and then Hinesley and Beach, and then the old band building, the facilities, even though they weren't state of the art, they're actually pretty good, but they were old. But there's so much history in the band building with the museums and the archives, and then Memorial Stadium and the Armory and just all that. It just created an incredible environment that was pretty special.
Well, you could almost feel the spirit of A.A. Harding walking around in the halls.
Yeah.
In my first year it came, his office was still intact, and I would go in at night and read all his mail, because they didn't have email in those days, but they wrote letters, and read letters, from Granger writing letters to Harding and things. And I would just go through and read all his mail, because he was the number one inspiration in the band world,
Well, my wife is a native of Illinois and grew up. She ended up going to a small school in Tennessee, but she even used to tell me about her memories of University of Illinois and the band and all that. So it's just...
Well, I think that was another thing also, too, that the three of you did a great job of instilling in us. I mean, you definitely, within weeks, knew the history, of the Illinois band program and all that, and you instilled in us that we all of us had a responsibility to maintain that and to keep that going. And I mean, I drank the Kool-Aid. I mean, I still feel like now I've got a responsibility as an Illinois grad to do good work in the field that way. So I mean, that's the thing that I think being a part of a historic program, that's a benefit that you can't get anywhere else. That's why
right.
I enjoyed teaching in Joliet and feeding into Don's program here and all that, because that's something you can't get everywhere. But I thought there's another thing that's about the Illinois program and what you guys did that was important.
Yeah, and as I continue into this profession, there are a few directors, and especially marching band directors around the country, who continue to be inspirational and so important in the lives of other former students, alumni, band directors, even though they've retired and moved on and are enjoying their careers in different ways. And Gary Smith is, without question, one of the all-time great, not only university marching band directors, but he's touched the lives of so many, countless Marching Illini alumni and University of Band alumni. And the fact that he's here today talking to us just like it was 20, 30 years ago is pretty cool. It's really something. So,
Well, just to kind of close up here, would you mind just some nuts and bolts that I think could help some other band directors out there maybe elaborate a little bit on student leadership?
Yes.
Well, yeah, that's one of my specialties, because my mission is to dispel the myths about leadership. And I never read any books about leadership, and I never held hands and sang Kumbaya or swang from vines or fell backwards, someone catch me. Those things I never saw a correlation between that and leadership skills. And so the whole idea is pretty simple in my mind. The leader, as my definition I mentioned earlier, is very fundamental. Someone who has the ability to change the way people act or think. And you have to become qualified to do that. So if you don't have the knowledge and skills, what are you going to do? How are you going to lead anything? And so I think a lot of the high school band directors give their students these titles. And as you know, the title means nothing. How many people have you known with a title that weren't very good leaders? And vice versa. How many times you known someone that was a great leader and they didn't even have a title? And so that's the other myth. And so a lot of the band directors don't train their students of exactly what role they should take and what their responsibilities are. And with student leaders, you don't want to go beyond the role that's defined by the director. I personally think student leaders should never be given the responsibility that involves interpreting rules or disciplining other students. They should have a specific role of running music sectional or taking attendance or, giving private help to students struggling with music and so forth. And that chapter in my book lists all the kinds of things that student leaders should do and should avoid doing because and of course, the whole thing deals, in order to have influence over people, you got to be respected. So then it's important student leaders discover what are the things that cause people to respect you. Because if they respect you, then you're more likely to be influential in working with them. And the things that cause people to be respected is how you treat people, and how you basically use your ability to give other people benefit from it rather than trying to be a big shot, who's bossing other people around. And so it involves doing the dirty work and things that behind the scenes has nothing to do with running a rehearsal or something, things like lining the football field, putting out water, setting up, things that done behind the scene has an effect on the effectiveness of the band, even though it's not visible. And so most of the section leaders, student section leaders, want to do things that are visible, they get recognition for, that elevates them and so forth, rather than what are the nitty-gritty things that need to be done to help the band get better, rather than what can I do to make myself look important. And so as I observe student leaders, the ones who boss people around and try to inflict their authority over the people are the least effective because they're not respected. Yeah. And so that's it. I think band directors need to understand there's a difference between, an adult leader and a student leader. So you have to prepare them to do effective at their age level, and actually age has nothing to do with respect. If I want to become a better tennis player, and I got a 16-year-old kid in the band that's a national champion, and I want him to teach me how to play tennis, I don't care he's 16. He's got knowledge. He's got expertise. So teach me how to play tennis. So age has nothing to do with it. And so that's why, the whole concept of you have to be older or whatever has nothing to do with it. It has to do with your competence and whether you are able to be qualified to take on the responsibilities that are assigned to you. So that's why we have the camps in the summer, because a lot of directors don't have time to train their kids, so we train them for you and give them the things they should be doing as student leaders.
Great. Well, thank you for your time here today. We appreciate you letting us into your hotel.
Well, it was nice to have Cody drop in, but we didn't mention that Cody's the director of bands at the University of Kentucky now and has had a stunning career. And his ensembles at Kentucky are some of the best in the country. And it makes us feel proud that somehow he was influenced by the experience with us. And I think the greatest reward a teacher can get is to see their students succeed. Yeah. Because there's certainly not going to be monetary rewards.
Well, I can't let this end without thanking the both of you for what you brought to me personally as a student and just to the band world in general. So thanks for sitting down with us.
Well, my pleasure, and that's why we're in the teaching profession.
Absolutely.